Hi. Hello.
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 Hello, and welcome to Architecting.
I'm kind of a wannabe architect who had the great good fortune to discover early on that I really stink at architectural design.
We get there and like all the Swiss students, they've been there early. So everything's all pinned up beautifully, and the work is freaking unbelievable. It's like, oh my God, how they do this? And they were blowing us away. Bob and I were so humbled.
Hi, hello, and welcome to Architecting. So this is a podcast about the lives of architects, about the people and the stories behind the buildings and the images that we see around us. And with this very international world that we live in, this show will purposely be local and narrow, only focusing on the Colorado community of designers. I'm your host. My name's Adam Wagner. I'm a Denver-based architect. I'm married to an architect. I have 2 architecture degrees and have worked for a dozen architecture firms in 3 different countries. But for the last 5 years, I've been rooted in Denver, where I'm at Open Studio Architecture, and I teach at the University of Colorado, Denver. I like connecting with other architects and learning from their experiences. And now I'm broadcasting these stories with the goal of creating a stronger local community. So that brings us to our guest today, to Rick Petersen, a well-known principal at the large local architecture firm Oz. So Rick is an architect that I've heard a lot about, but never been able to meet. So I was happy to be able to use his podcast as an excuse to get to know him better. And he has a way about him that's very approachable and really gives you the feeling that you've known him for a long time. And like I said at the beginning of this interview that you'll hear, Rick has a very impressive resume. He is a graduate of the University of California, Berkeley, and Harvard's Graduate School of Design with a stint at the ETH in Zurich. He's worked for Donald K. Olson and Associates, SOM, and Coleman, McKinnell, and Wood before spending the last 30 years at Oz Architecture, where he's a principal. And look, I sort of had to cut this off at about an hour, but we could have talked a lot longer about other parts of Rick's career. We never got into his teaching that he's done with the University of Colorado, or the dozens of lectures that he's given, or the leadership that he's provided to the AIA, as well as being awarded an FAIA. We only scratched the surface on the amount of projects that he's developed. So we might have to have kind of like a part 2 with Rick at some point, or at least I'll have to hit record the next time we grab a beer. Anyways, I hope you enjoy this one. And remember to check us out on Instagram or go to architect-ing.com to see images of Rick's work. Thanks.
That was pretty.
Think we got it?
Pretty painless. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
I'm using a little duct tape to make sure my iPhone is standing up and still in power. So yeah.
Nice. It's like an architectural problem right there. Is just figuring out how to get the phone to.
Yeah, from
right.
3:58 to 4 p.m. So yeah.
Yeah.
Don't go anywhere without duct tape.
That's kind of like the profession, right? 3:58 to 4 p.m. That's when you get most stuff done, or the amount of time you have to do things in.
Yeah, I don't know. I just gapped a Zoom call at 3:30 that I was just sitting here at my desk doing my thing, and then about 3:35 someone buzzes me and says, "Are you going to join us?" Like, yeah, I've been sitting here waiting. Oh, it's 3:35. So.
Yeah, I do that when I say, I have 3 minutes before that meeting starts. I can get something done, and then 3:35. Yeah, but.
We architects have no sense of time. Never did, never will. So.
Oh, nice. Well, thanks for joining. Good seeing you.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah. It's this is, I guess, officially the only second time we've met. It was nice when I reached out to you earlier, and you wanted to have a initial call and had a good long conversation with you, and it just feels like I've known you for a long time already, but I don't
Likewise.
know why. Yeah, right. And I think it's It's also, I've heard so much about you. Our mutual friend, the great Miles Dake, he talks about you quite a bit, and my wife interviewed with you when we first moved here.
Right.
But yeah, and then I think you sent you did something nobody's done for me yet, is sent their resume over, and that's probably like the most impressive resume I've ever seen. About 12 pages long of just accomplishments and
there are others that you've
positions
interviewed that may have it's more quality than quantity. So don't get duped. I've just been doing this a while, so it adds to the resume. So
yeah. Well, that starting us off, let's go to the first question. So, how would you introduce yourself to somebody? Who are you? Summed up in as short or as long as you want.
I'm the father of two awesome girls and husband to an awesome wife, and I happen to be an architect. Still trying to figure this out. Still have curiosity about how to do it better. Still making mistakes most days. I guess I would say it's important to know that I'm doing this in a place where it is really exciting to work, has been since we moved here in 91 from Boston. I'm from the Bay Area, San Francisco area originally, but Allison and I moved here in 91 and for most of the reasons why everyone else moves here, quality of life and opportunity. And I've just found that Denver and the Rocky Mountain region is one that just works. There's not only the opportunity, but it's really, really fun to work in because it's so collaborative. It's that's overused a lot, but I am convinced that this region is unique in that everyone's basically here to help each other. I'm boiling it down. I'm simplifying it, but it's much stronger than the coasts or a lot of other places in the world, and I think that's really helped shape my career too. I'm really get excited by helping others, whether it be a client or a general contractor or even another competing architect. So there's a kind of we're all in it together here. That is that describes me. I'm still on your first question.
That's good. I like that. So that attitude, I mean, that's a fairly unique attitude, I'd say, especially for someone, I mean, both coasts because you've been on both coasts, right? But so that attitude of kind of the collaborative, helping each other out, did that start with growing up in the Bay Area, going to Berkeley? Like, is that a kind of thing? So let's start with your kind of background there.
I don't know. Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, some people, like some of my partners, would say that I'm just wired to not really follow through on stuff really well, and I'm really good at getting other people inspired to do things. So, which most other people are smarter and more creative than me anyway. So that's good. But I don't know where the roots are on that. I don't know. I'm a bit ADD, so it's the latest flashy thing gets my attention, and that works well for my role with the firm because I see opportunities and find a way to make connections and ultimately in service of the client, right? And that's the role here, is to get the right people around the room to do great projects.
Yeah,
so
that's interesting. I mean, so let's go back to your kind of background and growing up. So you grew up in the Bay Area, and then you went to school at Berkeley. Was it a pretty clear choice? So that's where you want to go, or tell me about how that kind of.
Well, it was the only place I applied, which is crazy these days, huh?
Yeah.
And about 6 months into it, I think me I and many other people realized that, the door was kind of shutting behind us. B+ high school students in California. So anyway, that it was the only place I applied because my grandfather went there and had a chance to be on the campus a few times, and just thought it was a really great place. Did I want to be an architect? I wasn't positive then. Kind of sure. I knew they had a good, strong program, but started thinking that I'd take some pre-med classes, and that lasted about a week. I think organic chemistry, something like that. So, it was a kind of thing where you just start taking some of the undergrad prerequisite classes, and you take one, and that leads to the next, and then the next, and suddenly you're graduating with environmental design. Now, you don't know anything about architecture, and we kind of knew that. No, we didn't know that. Kind of knew it, but it's a real liberal arts degree. It's very similar to the one at CU Boulder, but I was not qualified at all to practice architecture or even be in an office. But I got a really great opportunity, and this was in '82 when I graduated, and there was really no work. So a roommate was working a burger place, and he got them to hire me to be a barista. So in 1982, this is like before Starbucks, I was learning how to make coffee. That's pretty cool.
That's something that will serve you for your life, yeah.
But I was terrible at it, really, really terrible at managing my time. And so that didn't last long. But I got a great job. I went into the AIA this is all pre-digital, so you'd have to take the bus into San Francisco. You go to the AIA office and look on the cork board, and there's a little notice for an architect intern at a small firm in Sausalito, so in Marin County. And '82, there was really no work, but for rich people, and Marin County has those, lots of them. And so I got this amazing opportunity to join this 7-person firm. And the first day, this is important because the first day, basically, the head of the office who had come, these guys were from Arkansas and Oklahoma. And they'd been there 10, 15 years beforehand. But the day one, Don Olson, the name on the door, says, okay, so we basically know you don't know anything. So we're going to teach you to be an architect here, or start teaching you to be an architect. And I said, I don't know, what's that mean? See, it says you're going to see the whole project from start to finish, the whole shoot and match, from meeting with the client, understanding the zoning codes, soliciting a general contractor, working with them to solve problems as they're building it. You're going to do all of that. And I was terrified. He says that your first project is going to be, we're going to start you a little slow. The first project is a trash can enclosure for a client. So next to their garage, an enclosure for the trash cans. Oh my God, that was really challenging. Was it in the setback? Where? How do I detail how do you keep the slats from falling apart, and the hardware on it? How do you spec that? Working with a contractor to build it. I mean, everything. So that was really cool that he started me like that. And then the next project was a carport, right? Sounds simple enough. Oh my God, impossible, almost. So. And it was this 2 years of just kind of gradually feeding a little bit more complexity in a small firm, 6, 7 people, where everyone sort of is there for mentoring and helping. And these people have become lifelong friends. And one may be on, I don't know, I hope he's not. But anyway, that was a gift, right? So I encourage a lot of students to not run for big, large firms right away. Cut your teeth in small firms where you have that kind of intimacy and support. Now we are a larger firm that is chopped up into a bunch of, in a way, smaller groups that I think really do offer that kind of support for growth at the same time. So, you know.
You probably don't do a lot of carports, I'm guessing, but.
No, but we do a lot of, we serve our clients no matter what they need. And some of them, like Denver Public Schools, or they'll need a boiler replacement or a screen for a mechanical unit on the roof, and we're there for them. So,
right, yeah,
that's okay. And again, those are challenging projects because hardly any project has enough time or money to do it.
Yeah,
so.
And especially that trash enclosure. That's so perfect. It's that little building in a microcosm that you have to go through all the same steps, but supposedly it's easier. But yeah,
I had no idea. It seemed easy enough, when he told me about it. It's like, no, it's not so easy.
Yeah. So how long did you stay at that firm then?
So that was for 2 years. I had classmates who, this is another really key thing. I had some friends who had more smarts and aspirations than I did, and more self-confidence. So one guy, a really close friend who's also could be on, I don't know, turns to me as we're leaving studio one night at Berkeley, and he goes, I said, so what's up or something? And he goes, I'm applying to Harvard. And I said, You're what? He goes, yeah, I'm applying to Harvard. And I didn't know we could do that. He goes, yeah, we could do that. So he did, and he got in. I did and didn't get in. And then, but he was like, you can do this, So anyway, I was at this firm for 2 years. After 1 year, I applied there and Columbia, and got into Columbia, but not Harvard. And I decided I really wanted to work for a couple of years anyway. 1 year isn't enough to sort of get into anything. But I figured it might take me a couple of years to get in, and sure enough, it did. So I took a couple of years to do that. Once I got in, then so that was the 2 year mark, working for this small firm, and then I headed to Boston. So what helped also to get in the second time is at this 1982, when there was no work, the first summer just after graduating undergrad. There was a group at Cornell who was, they did an exchange with 10, 12 students from Berkeley went to Cornell for the summer, and 12 Cornell students came to Berkeley for the summer. And I had very little else to do. So I thought, oh, well, I'll see what East Coast education is like. And so I spent the summer at Cornell. And where I'm going with this is that I think one of the selection committee, the portfolio review people, the admissions office at Harvard, and I know he was on that group, and I bet he helped get me in the second time. So
however you can do it, right? Yeah.
There's that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you did the exchange in Cornell. So, I mean, like that idea of choosing a grad school, it's like, it seems like most of the time you choose an undergrad where it's nice and close to you and kind of cheap. But then grad school is that nice thing where you can really reach out normally and really kind of choose kind of the direction you're going in, And so you said you applied to Columbia and Harvard, right?
Yeah.
And what was kind of going on at the time? Was it like, I just want to go to the best. I want to, why those two or why Harvard?
No. Oh, this is great. This is I got all sorts of insights on that I think apply still today. Okay, so first of all, the Cornell thing was like 8 weeks, and I learned more about architecture in that 8 weeks than the previous 4 years at Berkeley. So, because it was a little less, liberal arts too, right? To be fair, I mean, it was really focused, and it was these. At the time, it was these educators who had started in Texas with Colin Rowe. That was Texas Rangers.
The Texas Rangers, yeah.
Yeah, so they were there. It was Michael Dennis, and Colin Rowe was there and alive, and Lee Hodgkin, all these old guys. So that was super instrumental, I think, anyway, to me. And so that galvanized that I want to go to grad school on the East Coast. And Michael Dennis was the one on the selection committee that probably helped grease the wheels to get me in. When I got, so I wasn't convinced that Harvard was the right one. Columbia at the time, everyone was saying Columbia is a better school. You should go there because Harvard is just it's a cookie cutter for corporate architects. That was what people were talking about back then. And Columbia is doing like real work. And so I went to New York and I checked out I made a loop. I went to Columbia and then up to Harvard. This is after I got into Harvard. So I was trying to decide between these two. A lot of people were saying Columbia is really where it's happening. And by gosh, it was. I went up to the studio in Avery Hall and it was, 9:00 at night. It was after dinner, right? When studios start really happening. And I go in there and crickets. There's no one there. There's hardly anyone there. Huh. Apparently the economy then, now this is in 84, so I guess it was picking up. It was big enough in New York that a lot of the students were all off like working for their professors doing helping on real projects. So I'm told. Again, this could be through my filter of anyway, the studio was pretty dead. And I thought like, okay, well, and I didn't have anything to compare it with other than Worcester Hall at Berkeley, which was one of these classic kind of, it's humming at night. A lot of people collaborating, So then I get on the train, go up to Boston, walk into Gund Hall at 9 or 10 at night, and that thing is on fire. I mean, like humming. Like there's just energy. Like you
that
can't
big
believe.
Space, yeah.
Yeah, well, that helps too.
Yeah.
The trays, everyone's
all
kind of open, and you hear everyone. And I mean, in 30 seconds, you're like, okay, I get it. This is where but I have no idea how I got in here really, but I want to be here. So that was the kind of.
So what was the buzz with Columbia? Like who was the dean? Who was there? And then,
Yeah, it was like Chumi was.
Okay,
it was just not quite Chumi. I think I forget who all the players were at the time. I mean, it was Eisenman and all those. They were just names to me. I didn't really understand what that meant too much, but they were names.
Yeah. And then Harvard, was Cert the dean there?
No, I'm not that old. Almost. I'm 60, so I'm old. But
I thought he lasted a while, but
he did. It was Harry Cobb. Really.
Oh yeah, okay.
He was there, and then I was there between Cobb and Moneo. So it was that, and then the dean was McHugh from San Francisco. So that was going on, and there was this Texas Ranger stuff. There were several of them from Syracuse and Cornell, and then you had Switzerland. You had Mario Campi and Dolph Schnabely and Marc Angelil, who was just this young pup at the time, but he was teaching first year, and there was this connection to the ETH. That's the Swiss Polytechnic in Zurich, and that resonated with me a lot. And so one of my main mentors, who we just lost about 6 months ago, not even, Bruno Pfister, he was at Syracuse, ETH, Swiss-born ETH, then went to Syracuse to teach, and also Maryland. Anyway, he was a professor of mine that he and his wife came to our wedding, and really meaningful. He's my architectural father, right? So through him, I also got to know the opportunity for the ETH. So halfway through Harvard, I went to Zurich for almost for 8 months, because the semesters are not aligned. Then you can go, and I worked for a couple of firms there in Zurich, and then did a semester at the school, and then came back for my thesis kind of thing. And that was super instrumental in informing how I think about architecture and life too. The main thing I learned about that. How much time do we have, by the way?
This is keep rolling, man. There's no limit. Let's.
Well,
it'll be how long people stay on. I guess that's the thing. But,
well, then we should. That could be like 3 minutes.
Right.
A really great lesson about working as an architect in life. I got there. Two of us Harvard students did an exchange with ETH, and 2 ETH students came to Harvard. The two, it was me and this kid from Buffalo, Bob Pietrowski, who's in Germany now working. He married a woman, a German, and they are like the town architect they're doing really great work. Anyway, Bob and I show up at the studios in Switzerland, and we think we're hot stuff. And we are at our desks in their studio and jamming on our Walkman, listening to REM, this new band. And it's about 10:30 at night, and I'm not making this up. We both kind of look up at each other, and we're the only ones in the studio. There's no one there at all. And we're like, well, we know what we're doing, and architecture, you got to work hard and put all the sweat into it. And Bob and I were there till the requisite midnight or 1. There's no one there at all, and we come in the next morning to pin up the first, like a mid-review pin up, and we get there, and like all the Swiss students, they've been there early, so everything's all pinned up beautifully, and the work is freaking unbelievable. It's like, oh my God, how they do this? And they were blowing us away. Bob and I were so humbled by the quality of the work and the fact that these Swiss students could actually speak because they'd had a decent night
because
sleep.
They were well rested.
Yeah, and they had healthy relationships, and they would go swimming at 5 o'clock. And so they physically they were healthy. Emotionally, I think they were in a good position, and they were just like better people, and they did better work. And this really affected me in a positive way. So I came back. Bob and I came back to do our thesis, and I was like in the hallways teaching my classmates how to juggle, and I'd go to bed at 10:30 or something, and it was like this shift, right? And by the way, the same thing I saw in the workplace too. I was in 2 small offices where same thing, like 10:30 in the morning, all of a sudden, like, oh, no one's working, what? And everyone stops and they go into the adjoining room and they have a coffee, and they just the whole office just talks about how your garden is going, or stuff, not architecture necessarily, and they do it again at 3. I mean, it's so nice. And I tried to do that here when I came back in offices or with my team here, and it's tough.
Yeah, I've heard that generally, right, the idea of like Swiss firms is that if you're working super late hours, you're not being efficient, right? It's a sign of like not running a firm well, and
right.
It's
right.
like you should.
I mean, it's a cliche that they're disciplined, but they are. But there is this work-life balance that I think is just wonderful, and it has affected me, and maybe that helped me think that there's a good fit in a place like the Rocky Mountains, where that is arguably, supported and known. At least we talk about it. I mean, I'm not saying people on the coast don't have it. It's just, it is a little more overt here. Like I do recruiting for the office, and we always talk about, and it's always a question for candidates too, is like, am I going to be, I'm moving from, Indianapolis here, and am I going for the mountains? Am I ever going to see them? And we say, yes, you will. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So you're at Harvard, you're at ETH. I mean, you're working with Fitzer. What are you able to kind of do you understand like what you come out of there with? Like, do you have a sort of like theory that you come out?
Oh no.
What'd you get from it? And then where'd you go with it?
Yeah. Well, first of all, you're 27 and you're a guy, so you don't have much perspective or at least I didn't. I mean, I knew that there was a rigor and a way of putting buildings together, investing in craft, and I even knew at the time that the horizon for investment in buildings is longer there than it is here. I actually, because they talked about it, and so you knew that you were building better, longer, more thoughtfully there than you do here. And it was, it was a bit of a bummer coming back and not having that as a basis as much, right? It's not that it's a bit of a bummer. That's one way to say it. It's an opportunity too, and there's loads of people who are up for the challenge and make really great work here. That's for sure. Lasting, well crafted, So I'm not. It's just more of a lift here, right?
Yeah,
seems like.
So after Harvard, did you move here right away, or?
No, I worked for Coleman, McKinnell, and Wood, which was so one of the partners is Bruno Pfister. He got me the interview, and he goes, "Don't be confused. You're not ever going to work for me. I don't want anything to do. You don't want anything to do with me." So he got me the interview, and then I worked with other people, which was pretty cool. I mean, there's a lot of people that have been able to get through that experience, that kind of firm, and at the time they were doing U.S. Embassy in Bangkok and some really, really strong work. They were, they got their start with the Boston City Hall when Michael was 27 or something like that. And anyway, it was, when you look back at the trajectory of that office, which doesn't exist anymore, we can talk about that too in terms of continuum, leadership growth, all that types of firms. But anyway, that firm in 88 to 90, there was a real high point. The work that they were getting and the work they were doing was just pretty exceptional, I thought. And I was really psyched to be there. And so I was there for 3 years before moving to Denver. So,
yeah, I mean, because that had to be interesting working there, especially coming off that building and like, it's such a awesome building, but then it's like one of the most hated buildings in America, right? And like, was there kind of a backlash to that when you were there at that point or anything, or were they still hitting it pretty strong? But
well, the style and the way of going about things were quite different. It evolved, right? Mm-hmm. It was conceived in the early 60s, and the real turning point for that firm was the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, which is a much more like I'm going to butcher this totally, but the beauty of that was it had a kind of rigor, but it was based in it was really deferential to its a whole bunch of things like not budget probably, but it was deferential to the site in a beautiful way. It was really it was a forgiving building that was really humanistic and welcoming, and is a pretty amazing building. And that set the tone for most of the work since then that was like work I was working on. So, but much more. I mean, look at the planning work that they did, like the Kauffman Foundation in Kansas City, and it's alto, and it's really nuanced, right? It's not brutalist, right? So,
okay, yeah.
And so the deferential to the circumstance, the academic, that that was talked about all the time, and seen and imprinted. So it isn't this like pure formal thing all the time. There's times for relaxing some of that, and KMW could do it in a pretty phenomenal way. So.
Interesting. So, okay, so then you moved to Denver, and you started Oz right away.
I did. That was the only offer I got. So Denver was just coming out of so
when was that?
My first job was the only offer I got, and then this one was the only one. So, but lucky. So in '91, Denver was coming out of. They got hit really hard in 1986, 1987. The economy here was, as most people know, it was pretty focused on oil and gas. It wasn't all that. The cable was starting, but it wasn't that diverse. So, in 86 or 87, oil and gas took a big tumble, and so did Denver with it. So everyone was leaving. There was no work. So they were just coming out of that in '91, and there was an enthusiasm and a positive outlook to the place that really, was cool to sense, and it made sense to be here. So it was. And I was telling my classmates who would go to New York or Chicago or LA, they'd be like, why are you going to Denver? It's like, and I'd say, isn't that a cow town? And I'd say, well, yeah, but there's promise and, bigger fish in a smaller pond and that kind of thing. And you do realize pretty quickly it was a smaller pond too.
Yeah.
There's that.
Yeah, especially then.
So anyway, the firm really had just joined and recreated itself. It was two 15-person firms, one in Boulder, one in Denver, Ziegel in Boulder, Obermeyer in Denver. And in '89, they were really struggling to grow too, and get beyond a certain type of project. So these two friends, one night, probably over a few drinks, said, look, let's just try this. Let's join at the hip and see what happens. So they did in '89. This is 2 years before I showed up. And they immediately got an open-end contract with the Air Force Academy. And then got another open-end contract. These are like multiple 5-year contracts with the National Park Service. So I showed up just when they were getting this kind of work and not having enough people to do it. And it just seemed like a really good match and opportunity. So. That's
so interesting, because I've always kind of wondered, I've tried to figure out the beginning of Oz and like, what's that name? Where's it? And there's always seemed this kind of thing of like the Boulder and the Denver. And so that's interesting that it's those two firms that came together and,
Yeah, most of my, it was a funny name. It still is. But back then, firm names were like Bone, Petersen, Fox, Gidmo, Owings and Merrill, Coleman,
it's your law firm, yeah.
Yeah, and so my friends, they would say, so where are you working? Oz? Wow, that sounds pretty funky. But, now firms are, the good thing about that is it's not and this was by design too. It's not about these two people. It's the whole thing is about this culture of innovation, collaboration, and growth, professional growth. And the continuum of this firm. So it's we're in our 55th year, and we're just stewards of it. So we're just caretakers. For the time we're here, and it's the old, you want to leave it stronger than you found it, and there's a real commitment to that. And what helps is some, abstract name.
Yeah,
like Oz.
So, I mean, I feel like I sort of know Oz. I don't. Do you know Will Henschel? Yeah. So I worked for him for 3 years at 359. And
Oh.
so he was a principal there at Oz. And so I feel like we were sort of like super mini version of Oz in some ways. You know, we had a lot of that sort of culture, but so tell me how Oz sort of works. So it seems like there's obviously the Boulder and the Denver, and then there's a bunch of principals, and
Yeah.
what's
So
the structure
you say
of it?
there's
Yeah.
obviously the Boulder and the Denver. Well, I'm here to tell you there's not the Boulder
There's
and
not?
Denver.
No.
No, see, and there hasn't been for about 4 or 5 years. Whoa,
Oh, okay.
no, 2010 basically we came together as
Okay.
one, and we're in one studio in Denver at 30th and Larimer, next door to Shake Shack.
Right.
That's the
That's
that's
everybody
the
knows.
landmark.
Yeah.
So since basically 2010, we decided we're all stronger together under one roof. Basically, it's 2 roofs. We're in 2 buildings, and how does it work? Well, we've got 18 principals, about 9 different practice areas. It's super diverse, and I tell people. And again, this is how I would describe us to candidates when they're thinking of joining us. They'll say, what's the culture like, and how do you work, and why is it? What about this diversity thing? And they also always want to know about the dogs. We got 11 or 12 dogs at any given time. So I tell people that let's start with the dogs. What's that mean? So it's a culture of this balance of freedom and accountability. So we give each other the trust and freedom to follow our passions in projects or geographies or project types or clientele, and we support each other in that. But it's not without having to be accountable to each other too. We have to do it responsibly. So that's the culture. I mean, we have people like former partner Steve Brooks, who had moved his kids to Uganda for a year, and while he taught there, and his students. Then grew to be planning director for Kigali, Rwanda, and so Steve has this connection to Africa and a passion for it, so that was supported for years. Now it's got to be accountant. It's got to be responsible also. Anyway, that he's one great example of the kind of diversity that we've got and how it's supported. Back to the dogs. So, if you want to bring your dog to work and it doesn't crap on the carpet, bring your dog to work. If it does, don't bring your dog to work. So it's this like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
We treat each other like responsible adults, but at the same time we say really go chase stuff, and it's this kind of entrepreneurial mindset that has really helped. After doing this with 18 principals for 20 years, you just naturally get an amazing diversity of work and types of working and types of clientele, and it's super exciting.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that's really interesting. When I look at Oz and sometimes other large firms like that, it's that difference between the firm with the 3 names on the door, right? Where there's a kind of single vision for projects and a single kind of directory or direction of an architectural project, right? And with Oz, there's such diversity in everything, it seems like. And I was curious about what holds the firm together. And I think that word of responsibility is really interesting. How does that carry through in the architecture as well, or the kind of creation or the body of work?
In other words, I mean, what are the common elements? Or...
Yeah, I'd say right when you look at Harry Cobb's work, like there's the direction architecturally that kind of holds it together or keeps it as a thing, right? And it seems like with Oz, it's not necessarily an architectural direction, maybe, but it's the values, or it's that word responsibility, or whatever.
There, you just answered it. Yeah.
But like, what is responsibility for you then within architecture?
Yeah. Well, it's this super delicate balance between, design leadership, knowing the right, and then some of this is formal, the formal stuff of how to put a building together and what color to paint it. And, there's that design know-how, leadership that we're being paid for, right? But then there's this delicate balance of serving the client with their budget and their schedule and their program and their desires and nuances. And I got all sorts of stories about where I've misstepped on that, listening to the client too much, that kind of thing. So what binds us all together, I think, is this. It's hard. I hope none of my partners are listening, but they could.
There's not a huge audience for this.
Yeah. What binds us is it's not the formal kit of parts, as you say, because the buildings all hopefully look like different from each other. But it's more the process and the values behind it, and it's this balance between client service. I'll tell you, stewardship for not only the block or the communities we're working with but for the globe is pretty darn strong. We've had. In '93, I was asked to help the National Park Service understand what this word sustainable is. And so since then, even and ever since, we've been working in a way that we've always really got an eye on stewardship of resources, and in the last 10 years, wellness. Our sustainability director is not just a director of sustainability. Julie's been a leader in this region and nationally for 20 years. So we've got who is that? Julie Edwards. Okay. Yeah. So out of that it's coming naturally that we do a lot of the country's first lead projects. A hospital in Boulder, first lead hospital, first lead resort in California that we did. The Fort Collins Museum of Discovery that I oversaw. That's the first platinum museum this side of the Mississippi. So we've got that kind of leadership, and we're doing. We're now on our fifth CLT building for Denver, and we're ahead of most other people in Denver anyway, understanding how to put a CLT building together.
Yeah.
And panelization and volumetric prefab. We're doing that stuff to be more efficient with both resources and of course, our clients' money when they go build things. So anyway, that's a common thing is that kind of innovation based on being smart with resources. It's not a formal thing that binds us all together, or a formal design process. You've got 12 or 18 different principals with their own kind of way of working with their own kind of clientele that demands a different process. Like for example, our work in resorts, which is 50% of our work, really capitalizes on a charrette format where there's a whole bunch of stakeholders, and we found over the years that that's a really effective tool and working nationally with that kind of clientele. Now, a charrette process with the University of Colorado or Lockheed Martin, not so much, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. Because Will came from the hospitality kind of side of Oz, and so I think we were kind of doing the same sort of charrettes systems as you guys might have been, but that idea of serving the client, you said you have a bunch of stories of when it tips one way or the other. I'm interested to hear about that, because it's a delicate thing, right? The idea of serving a client, sometimes possibly at odds of serving capital A architecture or society, right? Or place, and so it seems like a slippery slope, or more like a balancing act, right? Of how you're able to kind of steward or shepherd that client along, but allow it to come in. Do you have one of those good stories of when it worked or didn't, or?
Yeah, and you want addresses, don't you? Probably. So.
We can keep it anonymous.
Yeah. I can give you good hints, but there's I had a client. Well, a couple things. You mentioned I forget what the word you used, but it made me think. Part of this is investing or investing the time and having the communication skills and the empathy with your client to the word isn't teach them, but to bring them along with the right answer, and that takes work. And the architects that are better than me, and most of them are, they're really good at educating and making the client aware of this opportunity to do something at a higher level than what's in their head, and they're willing to spend the time, the fee, to do that. Now I'm decent at it, but the work. Let's just say the architects I really admire, they do it more. So. And I don't mind, learning from and talking about those where they were out of balance. And one of them was with a client who really have a really strong relationship with. We're doing work right now with them, and really important work. And at the time, I thought it would be good to tell this story about working with a community to create new homes for them, and where you sit on this spectrum of leadership and service, and we shared our story together on a stage in a leadership forum in Denver a few years ago. So, if you want, you can Google Denver leadership architecture or something. You'll find us. Anyway, that was really cool because we both were acknowledging that this is it's an opportunity that did we make all that we could have for it? We basically listened to the residents in a way that I'm wondering if we should have listened that much or not. Now. The residents are really happy with what they got. They really are. But I think that there were some opportunities for doing it stronger architecture.
Yeah.
Architecture.
Right. Do you have that high point of your career? Do you have a mountaintop moment?
Oh yeah. I've been telling people since 2000. No, there's one. There's one.
There's one.
No, not really. I thought there was one. One, right, it's a little cliche, but, today was a really cool day. And the last few months have been really amazing. Working with the Denver Housing Authority to create affordable housing in Sun Valley along the river and their two main purposes over the years. It's not just recently. Denver Housing Authority has had a mission to create equity, social equity, and wellness while they do it. So we were working on the complete transformation with them about 7 years ago in the Mariposa neighborhood. It was all about healthy living, wellness, growing food, air, light, community. That was about 7 years ago. Along in April, so just after March, when we're all really wondering what the world is going to be like for the next year, get a call from Denver Housing Authority, say, hey, we want you to do this block in Sun Valley, and we're assuming you'd be have interest in it. I had helped them remaster plan it a bit last year, and so I knew that there were like 9 city blocks. And in April they called and they said, "Yeah, we want to give you a block. Why don't you know the different blocks? Why don't you pick which one you want?" And I'm like, "It's the one along the river."
Yeah, nice.
and fitness. And there's recreation paths, and there's all sorts of reasons for along the river. So anyway, that came along. And the team in the office, we kind of can't believe the timing of this happening at the same time, as we're working, starting it in April. And then, so wellness and social equity, this is all we're talking about all summer, right? And here we have this opportunity to create 125 to 150 new homes and business incubators and food incubators for people coming into Denver. That is a high point. I mean, come on, that's really phenomenal. It's also, humbling and scary that we have this opportunity and all that. But so that's a high point. But the one that I thought would be a high point forever was one where we got to redesign the U.S. station in Antarctica for the National Science Foundation. So in 2012, I was in with my family touring the World Trade Center site in New York, and staring into the hole when I got one of the 2 holes, when I got a phone call from Lockheed Martin saying, "We want you to redesign the station and start with a master plan and then design buildings for that." This was in August, and they said, "We're sending you the medical paperwork to get you cleared so you can go down there in November." And oh my God, I just remember turning to my family like, "Okay, this is pretty amazing. This is pretty amazing." But it was strange because you were in this I'll never forget this. I mean, you had all these emotions going, and then you throw this thing on top. So it didn't take long for me to realize that this would be a high point of my career, and it would be all downhill from there. So I thought. So, but then you get these other really amazing opportunities. But the cool thing about that isn't just the place, and it sounds sexy and all that. This is it's a logistical hub that has been in place since 1955 on the coast of Antarctica, which I didn't really know anything about. I was pretty sure it was down, not up. It was all so new. But anyway, it was a logistical hub that the Navy had started in 1955. And the thing had just over the years grown and not according to, real good strategic planning. It was a little more incremental for a bunch of good reasons, decent reasons. Anyway, there's now 105 buildings scattered across the side of this active volcano, which is a crazy thing. It's all about science. It's National Science Foundation, and it's this is a community of about 1,200 people to support the science being done down there. And this is where I really realized that this would be a high point of my career is being on this plane, flying from, you have to go to Christchurch, New Zealand first to get there. And then you get on a Air Force cargo jet to take you 5.5 hours due south of New Zealand. On that plane, I looked around, and everyone was wearing like different kind of coats. Scientists were wearing these red coats, the aviators, the National Guard that was in charge of moving stuff around. They were in green, and then you had all these carpenters and tradesmen and their Carhartts. You had these different cultures, and everyone's there for this one mission. They're all in it to advance our understanding of the globe through about 5 different realms of science, astrophysics to biology. And that's when it was like, God, it's really, this is cliche, but you're part of something really big here.
Yeah.
And the job for us was to make McMurdo Station more efficient so that fewer dollars go into heating the place and more dollars go into the science. So it was a real concrete kind of charge that you could get super excited about. And by the way, the bar was really low too. They had like hardly any insulation down there because actually they had a nuclear plant, a small nuclear plant making steam, like unlimited steam for a while. And so a lot of the buildings are built with like R5. Yeah. So again, I could go on for 6 hours talking about this, but anyway, that's a high point.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like a really like exaggerated like example of you in a way of like that idea of really having to be connected to place and detail and energy efficiency, but then that idea of like all these trades and professions coming together and you helping to knit it all together and and make and have a good cool story about it and a sexy location. But
my client would he was one of the most amazing clients I've ever had in that he would trust me and not only do all the nuts and bolts of communicating and giving us the right resources and everything, but he would, when we got there, he was like, okay, now just go out and like eat it up and get to know the place. And I was making these connections between the scientists and the guys shoveling the snow and getting them to talk or getting an insight by doing some of that matchmaking. That now that you mention it, I felt comfortable doing that. So
yeah,
and sometimes that was at the bar too. I'd come home, come back to the dorm at 1 a.m, and he'd roll his eyes, go, "Oh, doing more research." Huh?
Yeah,
so,
yeah, exactly. That's how good architecture gets done. 1 a.m.
Yeah,
but hey,
unless you're in Switzerland,
yeah, But just because they weren't in the studio doesn't mean that they weren't out at the bar. Maybe you were just at the wrong spot.
That's probably true.
Well, hey, thanks. Again, this is like the second time we've met, but there's such a kind of lore or buzz around you of just being such a good kind of mentor or architect around Denver, and I think just that attitude that you have here, the kind of humility, but then also the kind of collaborativeness, it's inspiring. And appreciate you coming on and talking. So,
well, I think it's super cool what you're doing. I mean, it's not that different. You're having these conversations across a bunch of different viewpoints, and that's the key. So it's really cool that you're doing that. And I'm super humbled to be a part of that. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, like I keep saying, it's just all selfishness on my part, because I'm just trying to learn from all you guys who've already done what I want to do. So thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, have a good day, and talk.
Let's get a beer together.
Let's do it.
And continue the conversation.
Exactly. All right.
See ya.
Thanks.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this week's show. You can visit architect-ing.com to see images from this week's guest. And please rate and review this show wherever you listen to podcasts. Have a great week and continue to reach out. Thanks.
You can visit architecting.com. That's architect-ing.com to see images from this week's guest.
And please rate and review the show wherever you listen to podcasts.
Have a great week and keep connecting.